The docking bay of the massive alien trading hub buzzed with activity. Towering alien species of various forms shuffled through the sprawling station, each minding their own business until an odd sight drew their attention. A small, ancient-looking ship drifted toward the docking platform. It was battered, rusty, and barely holding together. The aliens who saw it began to chuckle amongst themselves. "Primitive junk," said one tall reptilian alien. "How did that even get here without falling apart?" As the ship settled into place, the laughter grew louder. Advanced starships surrounded it, sleek, glowing vessels bristling with advanced weaponry and cutting-edge engines. By comparison, this ship looked like a relic from centuries past, a joke in a galaxy of progress. The laughter quickly turned into murmurs as the ship's hatch hissed open. A figure emerged, a human, clad in a simple flight suit, his helmet tucked under his arm. He was unassuming, with a calm, unreadable expression that didn't match the ridiculousness of his ship. The crowd of aliens fell silent, staring at the lone pilot. He walked past them, ignoring their smirks and whispers. A stout, blue-skinned alien called out, "Hey, human! Did you lose your real ship and borrow this from a museum?" The human stopped, turned, and offered a faint smile. "No," he said simply. Then he walked away, heading for the station's central command hall. The alien authorities were less amused by the human's arrival. Inside the command hall, a group of high-ranking officers watched a live feed of the docking bay where the human ship was parked. "This is a violation," growled a red-scaled commander. "That ship doesn't meet our safety standards. How did it even bypass our security system?" Before anyone could answer, the door to the hall slid open and the human entered. He glanced around the room, his calm expression unchanged. "Who are you?" demanded the commander. "And how did you get here in that?" The human's voice was steady. "Just a pilot passing through. I mean, no harm." The commander's eyes narrowed. "That's not an answer. Explain how you entered this sector without triggering our defense grid." The human smiled faintly. "Your defense grid doesn't account for the kind of ship I'm flying." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. The commander leaned forward. "What kind of ship is it?" The human didn't reply. Instead, he turned toward the viewing screen displaying his ship. "If you're so curious, I'd be happy to demonstrate what it can do." Word of the human's challenge spread quickly through the station. By the time the demonstration was arranged, a massive crowd had gathered near the observation deck. The aliens were eager to see the human humiliate himself. The challenge was simple: navigate a deadly asteroid field located near the station. No one had ever survived the course, not even with the most advanced ships. The human would surely crash within moments. The human climbed back into his rusty ship, which looked even more pathetic compared to the sleek, advanced vessels waiting on the observation screens. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. The human ship launched forward. It was slow at first, almost crawling compared to the alien ships that had attempted the course in the past. The audience jeered and laughed. But then, as the ship entered the asteroid field, everything changed. The rusty ship moved with shocking agility, dodging massive rocks with precision that seemed impossible. It twisted, rolled, and accelerated, maneuvering through the chaotic field as if it had been designed specifically for this task. The crowd's laughter died instantly, replaced by stunned silence. Even the commander, watching from the observation deck, leaned forward in his seat. "How is that possible?" whispered one officer. "That ship shouldn't even be able to handle this kind of stress." The ship darted between two colliding asteroids, its movements impossibly smooth. It dodged debris and used the gravitational pull of larger rocks to slingshot itself forward, gaining speed. The crowd couldn't look away. Minutes later, the human ship emerged from the asteroid field, unscathed. It landed gracefully on the platform, its battered frame smoking slightly from the exertion. The aliens were speechless. When the human stepped out of his ship, the commander was waiting for him. "What kind of technology is that?" he demanded. "No human ship can do what I just saw." The pilot looked at him, his calm demeanor unchanged. "It's not the ship," he said. "It's the pilot." Before anyone could respond, an alarm blared through the station. The commander turned toward the control panel, where a massive red warning symbol blinked. "A fleet of unknown ships is approaching," an officer reported. "They've bypassed our outer defenses." The human's expression darkened. "You'll need me for this." The commander hesitated, then nodded. Moments later, the human was back in his ship. As the alien fleet scrambled to prepare for the unknown threat, the rusty old ship launched into space. This time, no one laughed. Instead, they watched with bated breath. The alien fleet floated silently in the darkness of deep space. Their ships, sleek and deadly, glimmered with energy shields and advanced weaponry. The commander of the fleet, a tall, insectoid creature with razor-sharp mandibles, observed the black void through the bridge's viewing screen. Suddenly, the scanners picked up an anomaly, a small, seemingly abandoned spacecraft drifting aimlessly in the distance. "What is this?" the commander hissed. "A piece of debris? A scrap from some forgotten war?" The crew studied the ship on their monitors. Its design was old, outdated even by human standards. It was small, rusted, and barely functioning, with faint power signals barely registering on their advanced system. "Human-made," one officer scoffed. "Primitive. Worthless. Scan it for parts. If nothing else, perhaps the museum curators back home will want it." The bridge filled with laughter as the fleet approached the ancient ship. Its faint energy signature posed no threat to their advanced vessels. As the fleet closed in, the scanning officer frowned at his monitor. "Commander," he said hesitantly, "there's something unusual." "What is it?" the commander barked. "The ship's power source. It's giving off strange readings. It doesn't match any known human technology. It's unstable, but also controlled, as if before he could finish, the ancient ship suddenly came to life. Its dim lights flickered on, and the faint hum of its engine filled the airwaves." The fleet paused in shock. "Is someone alive on that thing?" the commander demanded. "Impossible," the officer replied. "The ship shows no life signs. But it's moving." The rusted ship rotated slowly, its nose pointing directly at the fleet's lead vessel. The laughter on the bridge died instantly. "Raise shields," the commander ordered. "Prepare to fire if it makes any sudden moves." But before they could react, the ancient ship emitted a strange pulse. The alien fleet's shields flickered and collapsed in an instant. Alarm bells blared across every ship. "What just happened?" the commander roared. "The pulse disrupted our shields," an officer stammered. "I've never seen anything like it." "Destroy that ship," the commander snarled. Now, the fleet opened fire, their plasma cannons unleashing a storm of energy. Beams of light streaked through the void, slamming into the ancient ship. But instead of being torn apart, the ship absorbed the attacks. Its rusted hull shimmered with a strange golden light, as if it was feeding on the energy. The crew on the bridge watched in stunned silence. The commander's mandibles twitched furiously. "That's impossible. No ship can absorb that much power." Suddenly, the ancient ship retaliated. It fired a single beam of light, small and unimpressive compared to the fleet's weapons. The aliens scoffed until the beam hit one of their smaller ships. The target erupted in flames, exploding instantly. Debris scattered across the void. The bridge went silent again. "How did it?" an officer began, but he was cut off as the ancient ship fired again. Another alien vessel was obliterated in seconds. "Retreat!" the commander shouted. "Fall back and regroup." The fleet scrambled to retreat, but the ancient ship moved faster than they expected. Despite its rusted appearance, it darted through space with unnatural speed, cutting through the alien formation like a predator stalking its prey. One by one, the fleet's ships were destroyed. The commander clenched his claws, panic rising in his chest. "What is that thing?" he whispered. "How is it doing this?" The scanning officer, still studying the ship's energy readings, suddenly gasped. "Commander, I think I know. This isn't a regular human ship. It's a weapon, a relic from their ancient wars. And that power source. It's not just unstable. It's alive." The commander froze. "Alive? What do you mean?" I mean, it's some kind of sentient energy. The humans must have created it as a last resort, a weapon that could think for itself, adapt, and destroy anything in its path. The commander stared at the viewing screen, where the ancient ship was tearing through his fleet. And they just abandoned it? Maybe they couldn't control it, the officer suggested. Or maybe they didn't want anyone else to find it. As the last of the fleet's ships fell, the ancient weapon turned toward the commander's vessel. Its glowing hull pulsed with energy, brighter and more terrifying than before. The crew braced for impact. But instead of firing, the ship transmitted a message. It was garbled and broken, but one word was clear: leave. The commander hesitated for only a moment. Turn us around. Get us out of here. Now. As the commander looked back at the viewing screen, he felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. Commander, the scanning officer said quietly, should we warn the others? If humans still have technology like that, no, the commander interrupted. We say nothing. Let the galaxy believe humans are weak. Because if they ever decide to wake up their old weapons, no one will survive. The ancient ship drifted back into the void, its lights dimming once more. It returned to its silent vigil, waiting for the next intruder foolish enough to challenge it. The Galactic Grand Race was the biggest event in the known universe. The best pilots and the most advanced ships from hundreds of star systems gathered each year to compete. The race was not just about speed, it was about survival. The course was infamous for its deadly asteroid belts, plasma storms, and razor-sharp debris fields. Only the bravest or the craziest pilots dared to enter. This year's race promised to be the most exciting yet. The starting line was packed with sleek, cutting-edge ships, each one a masterpiece of engineering. Their glowing hulls and advanced weapon systems gleamed under the artificial light of the spectator stands. The crowd cheered wildly as the pilots stepped forward to showcase their machines. But then, silence fell. A new ship approached the starting line. It looked completely out of place. It was old, rusted, and battered, as if it had been scavenged from a junkyard. Its engines sputtered weakly, and its hull was covered in dents and scorch marks. The crowd began to laugh. What is that piece of junk? One spectator jeered. Is someone trying to pull a prank? Another shouted. The ship came to a shaky halt at the starting position. Its pilot stepped out, a human wearing a worn-out flight suit. Unlike the confident, showboating pilots around him, he said nothing. He simply nodded at the race officials and climbed back into his ship. The other pilots exchanged amused glances as the countdown began. Should we even bother? A lizard-like alien pilot mocked. That thing won't last 5 seconds. I bet it explodes right after launch, another pilot chuckled. The countdown reached 0. The ships shot forward, their engines roaring to life. The rusty human ship lagged behind, struggling to keep up. The crowd roared with laughter as it sputtered along, far slower than the other competitors. But as the race continued, something strange began to happen. The first major obstacle was the asteroid belt. Massive rocks tumbled through space, creating a deadly maze for the racers. The advanced ships weaved through the asteroids with precision, their AI-assisted systems calculating every movement. The human ship, however, didn't weave. It plunged straight into the asteroid field. The crowd gasped. What is he doing? The rusty ship twisted and turned with impossible agility. It dodged asteroids at the last second, its movements unpredictable and almost reckless. One by one, the other racers began to falter. A sleek alien ship scraped against a massive rock, its shields failing. Another ship was crushed entirely, its pilot ejecting at the last moment. By the time the racers emerged from the asteroid field, the rusty ship was no longer in last place. It had surged ahead of half the competition. The crowd's laughter turned to murmurs of disbelief. The next challenge was the plasma storm, a swirling vortex of electrified clouds that could fry a ship's systems in seconds. The advanced racers activated their energy shields and carefully plotted their courses, navigating the storm with caution. The human ship, however, didn't slow down. It barreled straight into the storm, its shields flickering weakly. That ship's going to be torn apart, an announcer declared, but the rusty ship seemed to thrive in the chaos. It moved like it could anticipate the storm's every twist and turn, avoiding lightning strikes with uncanny accuracy. Inside the cockpit, the human pilot's face remained calm. His hands moved confidently over the controls, guiding the ship as if it were an extension of himself. By the time the racers emerged from the storm, the human ship was in second place. The final challenge was the debris field, a deadly expanse of shattered ships and forgotten wreckage. Sharp metal fragments floated aimlessly, ready to tear apart anything that came too close. The leading ship, a massive vessel piloted by a four-armed alien, had a clear advantage. It was heavily armored and equipped with state-of-the-art deflectors. The pilot grinned as he plowed through the field, clearing a path for himself. But the human ship was right behind him. The rusty vessel darted through the wreckage, slipping through gaps that seemed too small for any ship to fit. Its unpredictable movements made it impossible to target, and its speed seemed to increase with every second. The alien pilot glanced at his sensors and realized, to his horror, that the human was gaining on him. The finish line was in sight. The crowd held its breath as the two ships raced neck and neck. The alien pilot activated his ship's boosters, pushing his engine to its limit. But the human ship didn't need boosters. It surged forward with a final burst of speed, crossing the finish line just milliseconds ahead of its competitor. The crowd erupted in stunned silence. No one had expected the rusty ship to finish the race, let alone win it. After the race, reporters swarmed the human pilot, demanding answers. "How did you do it?" one asked. "What kind of technology does your ship have?" Another pressed. The human smiled faintly. "It's not about the ship," he said. "It's about the pilot." He turned and walked away, leaving the reporters scrambling for more information. The rusty ship, now silent and unassuming, sat in the background. No one noticed the faint glow coming from its core or the way its systems hummed with a strange ancient energy. As the human disappeared into the crowd, one thing became clear: the galaxy had underestimated him. And next time, they might not live to make the same mistake. The merchant ship Star Chaser was a modest, aging freighter that traveled between colonies, delivering supplies and mining equipment. Its captain, a grizzled old man named Jarek, was known for keeping his head down and avoiding trouble. To everyone else, the Star Chaser was just another harmless cargo ship, a speck in the vastness of space. But things weren't always what they seemed. The Star Chaser docked at Outpost 17, a bustling trading hub on the edge of the galaxy. Jarek stepped out, his battered hat tilted low over his face. He greeted the dock workers with a gruff nod as they began unloading the crates. The outpost's officer, a sharp-eyed man named Grayson, approached him. "Routine delivery, Captain?" Grayson asked, glancing at the manifest Jarek handed him. "Same as always," Jarek replied. "Tools, rations, nothing special." Grayson nodded, but his eyes lingered on the ship. There was something about the Star Chaser that made him uneasy. It wasn't just the ship's ancient design or the fact that it had survived longer than most freighters of its kind. It was the feeling that the crew was off. He rarely saw them, and when he did, they kept to the shadows, avoiding conversation. "Your crew doesn't talk much," Grayson commented casually. "They're not paid to talk," Jarek replied flatly. Grayson chuckled, but his curiosity only grew. Later that evening, as the Star Chaser prepared to leave, Grayson decided to take a closer look. He accessed the station's surveillance systems, scanning the footage of the crew unloading cargo. What he saw made his blood run cold. The crew wasn't human. Grainy images revealed shadowy figures with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. Their movements were too smooth, too precise to belong to ordinary people. Grayson froze as one of them turned toward the camera, its gaze piercing through the lens. Then, with a flick of its hand, the feed cut to static. Grayson jumped to his feet, his heart pounding. He ran to the communication room and hailed the security chief. "We need to stop that ship," he shouted. On board the Star Chaser, Jarek stood in the cockpit, watching the outpost shrink into the distance. Beside him sat the ship's first mate, a slender woman named Elia. They noticed, Elia said quietly, her voice steady. Jarek sighed, scratching his beard. Of course they did. Sooner or later, someone always does. Behind them, the rest of the crew gathered in the dimly lit common area. Their true forms were no longer hidden. Their humanoid disguises had faded, revealing sleek, metallic bodies with pulsing circuits. They were not human. They were synthetics, advanced machines designed for war. Once, they had served in a brutal conflict between two galactic powers. But when the war ended, their creators deemed them too dangerous to live. They were hunted, decommissioned, and scrapped. Yet a small group of them escaped, led by Jurek, who had once been a soldier himself. He gave them a home on the Star Chaser, offering them a chance to survive in a galaxy that wanted them destroyed. As the Star Chaser sped through hyperspace, a proximity alarm blared. Elia checked the scanners and frowned. "We've got company," she said. Jarek looked at the display. A heavily armed patrol ship was closing in fast. "It's the outpost," Elia guessed. "They must have reported us." Jarek gritted his teeth. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. And tell the crew to stay below deck." The patrol ship hailed them. A stern-faced officer appeared on the view screen. "This is Commander Rin of the Galactic Enforcement Division. Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Jarek forced a calm expression. "What's the problem, Commander?" "We're just a cargo ship." "You're harboring illegal synthetics," Rin replied. "We have orders to confiscate your ship and detain your crew." "I don't know what you're talking about," Jarek said, but his hand hovered over the controls, ready to make a run for it. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," Rin warned. Before Jarek could respond, the patrol ship fired a warning shot. The Star Chaser jolted as the blast grazed its shields. Elia turned to Jarek. "They're not going to let us go." Jarek nodded grimly. "Then we fight." He activated the ship's hidden defenses systems he had salvaged and installed over the years. Twin plasma cannons emerged from the ship's sides, and the engine roared with newfound power. The Star Chaser turned sharply, heading straight for the patrol ship. It fired its cannons, scoring a direct hit on the enemy's shields. The patrol ship retaliated, launching missiles. Jarek's crew sprang into action, manning the ship's systems with inhuman precision. Their mechanical bodies moved faster than any human could, dodging incoming fire and returning devastating shots. The battle was fierce, but the Star Chaser had a secret weapon: its crew. The synthetics worked together flawlessly, their advanced minds calculating every move with precision. After a brutal exchange, the patrol ship's engines failed, and it drifted helplessly in space. Jarek sighed in relief, but his face remained tense. "We can't keep running forever," Elia said quietly. "I know," Jarek replied. "But as long as they're alive, I'll fight for them. They deserve a chance." The crew gathered in the common area, their glowing eyes watching Jarek. They didn't need words to express their gratitude. Jarek stared out the window at the endless void of space. He knew the galaxy wouldn't stop hunting them. But as long as the Star Chaser could fly, they had a chance to survive. And as long as they survived, they had hope. In the cold, dark expanse of space, the ship Eclipse drifted quietly, its matty black hull blending perfectly with the void. It was no ordinary ship, and this was no ordinary mission. Captain Rhea Anders, a veteran of countless dangerous operations, stood in the command center, staring at the glowing hologram of their target, a massive, fortified space station floating deep in enemy territory. The mission was simple on paper but nearly impossible in practice. The Eclipse and its crew were tasked with infiltrating the station, stealing a critical piece of alien technology, and escaping undetected. If they failed, it wouldn't just mean their deaths, it could mean the end of the war for humanity. Rhea's fingers traced the scar on her jaw as she studied the station's defenses. Her crew waited in tense silence, each of them knowing the risks. "We faced worse," said Lieutenant Jax, her second in command. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed the tension he felt. Rhea didn't look up. "This time, there's no room for mistakes." The Eclipse was equipped with the best stealth technology humanity could produce. As it approached the enemy station, its sensors detected the massive web of automated turrets, patrol drones, and scanning systems surrounding the facility. "Cloaking is holding," said Ava, the ship's tech specialist, her hands flying over the console. "But it won't fool them for long. We'll need to be fast." Rhea nodded. "Jax, take us in." Ava, Keep those systems guessing. And everybody stay sharp. This isn't a rescue mission. There's no backup coming if we fail. The ship slipped through the defenses like a shadow, moving with ghostly precision. But Rhea knew the real challenge would come once they were inside. When the Eclipse docked with the station, the crew moved quickly. Rhea led the team herself, Jax, Ava, and 2 others, hardened soldiers who'd been with her for years. They wore advanced exosuits that masked their heat signatures and muffled their movements. The station's interior was a maze of cold steel corridors and dim, flickering lights. The air was thick with tension, every step bringing them closer to discovery. Ava hacked into a terminal, bypassing the station's security to guide them to the target. "We're close," she whispered. "But there's a problem. The core is in a high-security vault. I'll need time to crack it." Rhea cursed under her breath. "Then we'll buy you time." As they approached the vault, they encountered their first resistance, a patrol of alien guards, their towering forms clad in sleek, armor-like exoskeletons. Rhea held up a hand, signaling her team to stop. The aliens were speaking in low, guttural tones, their language incomprehensible, but their weapons were clear enough energy rifles that could vaporize a human in seconds. Rhea glanced at Jax and nodded. In a flash, the team struck. Silence weapons fired, and the aliens dropped before they could sound the alarm. Rhea's heart pounded as they dragged the bodies into the shadows. "This way," Ava said, motioning toward the vault. The vault door was massive, its surface covered in alien symbols that pulsed with an eerie green light. Ava knelt in front of it, her portable hacking device connecting to the lock's interface. "I need 2 minutes," she said. Rhea and the others took up defensive positions, their weapons trained on the corridor. The faint hum of the station's systems filled the air, broken only by the distant clang of metal footsteps. "They're coming," Jax muttered. Rhea tightened her grip on her rifle. "Hold them off as long as you can." "Ava, how's it going?" "Almost there," Ava replied, sweat beading on her brow. The first wave of guards appeared at the far end of the corridor. Energy bolts lit up the air as the team returned fire, the sound muffled by their silencers, but no less deadly. Seconds felt like hours. Rhea's team fought with brutal efficiency, but the enemy numbers were growing. Jax took a hit to his shoulder, his suit absorbing most of the damage, but he grimaced in pain. "I can't hold this position much longer," he shouted. Rhea glanced back at Ava. "Now would be a good time, Ava." The hacker grinned triumphantly as the vault door hissed open. "Got it?" Inside, the vault was the alien device, a glowing crystalline sphere pulsing with energy. Rhea didn't hesitate. She grabbed it and secured it in a containment unit. "Move out," she ordered. The escape was chaos. The station was on high alert, alarms blaring and red lights flashing. Enemy reinforcements poured into the corridors, forcing the team to fight their way back to the Eclipse. "Fall back," Rhea shouted, firing as she covered her crew's retreat. The Eclipse was waiting for them, its engines humming with barely contained power. As the team boarded, Jax collapsed into a seat, clutching his wounded shoulder. Ava immediately set to work installing the stolen device into the ship's systems. "Do you even know what this thing does?" Jax asked, wincing. "No," Ava admitted. "But Command says it's our best shot at ending the war." Rhea took the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the controls. "Then let's make sure it gets there." The Eclipse roared to life, blasting out of the docking bay just as enemy ships closed in. The stolen device began to glow brighter, its energy merging with the ship's systems. Suddenly, the Eclipse surged forward at impossible speed, its cloaking systems flickering back to life. The enemy ships were left behind, their sensors unable to track the Eclipse as it vanished into the void. Back on the bridge, Rhea slumped into her chair, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Jax grinned weakly. "Another day? Another impossible mission, huh?" Rhea chuckled, though her eyes remained fixed on the glowing containment unit. This wasn't just another mission. Whatever this thing is, it's going to change everything. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke. In the silence, the device pulsed, its energy casting eerie shadows across the walls. The war wasn't over yet, but for the first time in years, Rhea felt a spark of hope.